Welcome here to a very special wake up call with Dan Tortora, part two, and us starting off this awesome record setting week for Syracuse Orange football. In part one, you saw on facebook.com/wakeupcalldt and facebook.com/live-now-dt, as well as on youtube.com/wakeupcalldt. My special with Robert Drummond, somebody from Syracuse Orange running back history that knows what it's like to be a lunch pail guy, a blue collar guy who doesn't say a lot, but just goes to work and does his job. Sean Tucker reminds me of Rob Drummond in the best of ways. And Rob just joined us to speak on Sean Tucker on a record setting day for Sean. Now I'm here with Cole Murphy of Syracuse Orange football history to speak on another record setting day from a kicker to a kicker. Cole Murphy to Andre Szmyt inside the Cafe Cuball studios. Welcome back to the show, Mr. Murphy. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Thank you for having me. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. And out on the West Coast, it always looks beautiful, always looks nice in the morning, and a lot of great stuff, blue skies. And just how is life out on the West Coast?
It's good. It's good. It's still pretty hot, though. That's the one thing I wish would change. But I'll tell you what, it's not bad. It doesn't it's better than -20. That's for sure.
Absolutely. And Cole, I mean, you're here today to speak on Andre Szmyt, passing the torch here. We heard during the game that the most field goals, for those who didn't know, the most field goals ever made in a career in Syracuse football history were 59, and that was by Cole Murphy. And so Andre Szmyt tied yours early on in the game. He kicked a 48-yarder to tie it. He made a 43-yarder. And then due to another penalty on a drive that killed a touchdown and a field goal, he had to go from 48 yards away. He gets it. He gets 59. Then from 28 away, he gets his 60th career field goal. He's a redshirt junior, still got another season, but he tied your record and now has passed your record to become the all-time career leader in field goals made in Syracuse history with 60 and counting. What's your thoughts on passing the torch to Andre?
Tell you what, I'm really proud, and I mean, you knew that was going to happen from season one. I mean, his first year he made 32 field goals, and I remember at the end of the season I saw that and I was like, yeah, that's going to happen. He's going to break that unless barring some crazy injury, which I hope never happens. But yeah, I'll tell you what, I'm really proud of him. I mean, I've seen him since he was a freshman. He was a freshman when I was a senior, and yeah, I mean, I'm incredibly proud of him. He's a good kid, and he's really worked his tail off, and he's earned it.
What's the conversation? Did you have a conversation with him after he broke the record?
A brief one. I know we're in the middle of season, so I try not to bug him too much. When he was a freshman and a redshirt freshman, I would be a little bit more on him. But I know for him, it's all business. We're going out there to win a game, and it's one of those things where I don't want to distract him. But yeah, I went and I texted him right afterwards, and I told him I couldn't be more proud. And I know, guys like Trout, guys like Krautman. I mean, we're excited for him. I mean, it's a good thing that the record's getting broken, because quite honestly, it means we're getting in the red zone more. It means that he's getting more chances, and it means that he's executing more. So overall, it's a net positive. Absolutely. So I couldn't be more proud of him.
Is it bittersweet to now be number 2 in Syracuse football history?
I mean, to a certain extent, yeah, but in reality, like I was just saying, I mean, it's a net good. I mean, yeah, technically I'm number 2 now, but I spent my time at number 1, and you know what? At the end of the day, records are meant to be broken. So I'm really excited for him, and he's earned it. I mean, he's the best as far as I'm concerned.
What makes him the best?
I think it's his mentality. I think it's the fact that he just executes. I mean, when you go out there, if he does miss a kick, he doesn't seem rattled. Nothing changes. He just goes out and does the next one better than he did the previous one. And that's what you need. And quite honestly, that's what you see in pros. You don't see pros get rattled very often, as long as they're real pros. If they're guys that are in the league for multiple years. If they're guys that are, kind of a flash in the pan, they'll get rattled, they'll get nervous, they do all that kind of stuff. But he shows all the signs of what a true pro has. And you need that. You really do.
Speaking here inside a wake-up call with Dan Tortora in the Cafe Cuball studios with Cole Murphy from Syracuse Orange football history. Had the record of 59 career field goals made at Syracuse, which was passed in this game over the weekend by Andre Szmyt, who now has 60, had his 59th and 60th in this game in a win over UAlbany. You met him, like you said, he came in as a freshman, Andre Szmyt coming on to the team. What did you take from that meeting? What did you take from that time with him? Bring me into that. What was it? What was the dynamic like between the two of you when you were a senior and he was a freshman?
Um, I want to say I think it was a mentor role. I the very first day that I met him, I went out to dinner with his family and him and Jeff Chan and his family. And Jeff was the other kicker that came in the same year as Andre. And I wanted to make it a point that I wanted to be there to help them. That was something that I felt like I really needed when I got there, and I wanted to make sure that I was there for the guys that need that when they get there. And that was something I really wanted to be when I was there. So yeah, I mean, when I was a senior, I would try my best to pick them up whenever we could, whenever we had meetings or whatever, so they didn't have to walk in the snow or anything like that. Or whenever we watched film, I wanted to make sure I helped him in any way that I could. Yeah. And I mean, obviously he took to it. He's done exceptionally well. And I mean, heck, he doesn't really need my help anymore. He's probably doing the same thing for the other guys. He's now probably the leader. So I love to see it. And I love that he's picked that up really, really well.
So, I mean, does it make you a proud friend, a proud fellow kicker, a proud big brother when you see the freshman do what he's doing? I mean, it's one thing to have a torch passed in history, but to have a torch passed from someone who was a freshman when you were a senior, I mean, it's really, taking somebody under your wing and trying to give them whatever you can, and then seeing him do that. I mean, it's got to be different to see someone break your record when it's somebody
It is. It's a little different. I mean, I remember when I was a senior, I believe it was Nate Trout's record that I broke. And I never really met Nate. We had talked here and there on social media, and kind of the same thing that I do with Andre now, where every once in a while we'll talk back and forth. But I never really knew Nate all that well. I mean, he's an older guy now. He's got kids and he's got responsibilities, but it's a little different. It's interesting being on the other side of that now. But yeah, and quite honestly, it couldn't happen to a better kid. I mean, he's worked his tail off, and I couldn't be more proud as I, quite honestly, I consider myself a friend of him. I really do. He's a good kid, and I'm just super proud of him.
Speaking here with Cole Murphy on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora inside the Cafe Cubal studios, coming off a record-setting day for you, for Syracuse against UAlbany, 62-24 win, record-setting day for Andre Szmyt. You said that you knew this from the beginning when he made 32, in his first season out there. Did you see it in him before the world saw it in him?
There were flashes. I feel like that's the case with a lot of kids. I mean, now I'm a kicking coach. I'm out here in California, and I work with a bunch of kids, and it's interesting that now that I'm older, you start to see that more with kids. And it's interesting to see that when they actually realize it. And Andre absolutely did. I mean, he showed flashes of it when he was young, but it's only gotten better and better. And he's continued to excel, and he's continued to work on his mental game, and his style is all his own, really.
What can you say about his style of kicking? Do you see certain nuances that move you to say that's like a little Andre flair, a little tweak or something that he does that maybe you pay attention to that maybe most people wouldn't see?
Not necessarily. I think the biggest thing that you can take away from it is how relaxed he is. I mean, he's incredibly relaxed when he goes out there. He doesn't look tense. He looks comfortable, and that's what you need to be. You'll see a lot of young kids when they go out there, they're really nervous. You can see they're tight, and he's not. He walked out there literally from day one, and he had the mentality of, I'm the man. I'm going to go out there, and I've got a job to do. And he almost had no doubt in his mind that was what he was going to do.
He came onto the team as a walk-on and got a scholarship, and then became the first kicker ever in Syracuse football history to win the Lou Groza Award for the nation's top kicker. When you hear his story told in that respect, from walk-on to the nation's top kicker, what does that make you think when you look back on, Szmyt coming onto a team not having a spot, not having a scholarship, being on the team at Syracuse and not having his tuition covered. You know what I mean? Just coming there and trying to take a shot to
Yeah,
being somebody that the nation regarded as the best.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think it goes to show that there's a lot of diamonds in the rough. I mean, especially for kicking, because it's such an underdeveloped skill. Not enough people know how to recruit for it. Not enough people know how to train it properly, and it shows. And luckily enough, it means you get guys like Andre who come in there and they dominate, and it's awesome to see. But honestly, I really think that there are a lot more kids like Andre out there who have the ability to do it and could get their schooling paid for, that just haven't been discovered. And I think where he comes from, Chicago, I think it's a great area to look around. I think LA is a great area. Atlanta, Dallas. I mean, even North Carolina has some great spots. And I think as football gets progressively better with that, you're going to see more kids like Andre, where they're going to come out and they're going to just dominate right away. But you love to see it right now. I mean, it's pretty cool to see, because you have a lot of these guys that come out there and, they've been ranked highly. They've been offered by multiple schools. And it's really cool when you see a guy that's not like that. I mean, Andre had Louisville. He was committed to Louisville first. Dave Bowler was there and he helped recruit him there. And then when Dave transferred to Syracuse and started working there, he brought Andre with him. And I'll tell you what, I mean, Dave Bowler he's the man. I mean, he's the guy that found Lamar Jackson originally. And I mean, he just finds talent. He's phenomenal.
Yeah, and you talked about this is underdeveloped. So with Dave Bowler, what you could say about his coaching ability and just what he's done and his ability to find diamonds in the rough, like an Andre Szmyt, and you talked about Lamar Jackson too. Just what he's done that's moved you in, when you say that it's underdeveloped, it's something that, we need to do better at when we look at, coaching and just seeing and finding talent, honing that talent, grooming that talent. What does he do so well that makes you want to mention him here today?
I think he just has that natural eye. I mean, there's some people that just have it, and he's been really good at it. I mean, he consistently finds good guys. And actually, funny enough, Dave isn't with Syracuse anymore.
Yeah.
I think he's living in Phoenix. And I still talk with him every once in a while just to kind of check in. And every once in a while I go to combines out there, and so I'll call him and we'll chat for a little bit. But yeah, I mean, it goes to show how good of a recruiter he is. And whenever I think of Andre, I automatically think of Dave because of, the way that he ended up getting there and everything. So
yeah, and that's the thing. You say it's an underdeveloped. Why do you think it's so underdeveloped? I mean, what are people not doing when it comes to kickers? I mean, is it just a lack of focus? Is it trying to, fill all the other spots first when it comes to, kids growing up in the sport? Is it that kids maybe don't want to play that position right away? I mean, what's going on that you feel like there's not enough being done with really making sure that there's a focus on special teams?
I think there's a couple things. I think one of them is, when you think of football, you think of the quarterback, you think of linebackers, you think of linemen, running backs, receivers. You don't really think of kickers. They're kind of the afterthought, and it's understandable. I mean, we're only out there for maybe 10% of the game total. So there's that part. I mean, we're not thought about quite as often. And then secondly, it's a hard area to recruit for, because most kickers are soccer players, right? So if you go into upstate New York, there's not a lot of kids that play soccer. They all play basketball, they all play lacrosse or football or even hockey. There are certain areas like California, like Texas, Florida, sometimes in the South, like in Georgia, where soccer is pretty common. So you'll find a lot more kids that have the ability to do it. But now that football's getting better with that, you're going to start seeing more and more kids like that are the talented right out of the gate. But yeah, I think the other part too is that most schools still don't really have a kicking coach, or they don't have a guy that can recruit kickers that knows what's good kicking and what's not. They just see makes and misses. They see down the middle or middle. They don't see the fine little things that separate kids. And that's why, like, University of Florida, they have Shane Graham, who played in the league for decades, and he's now their kicking coach. And I mean, you can tell Eddie Pinheiro is in the league now. Johnny Townsend's in the league. Tommy Townsend's in the league. Evan McPherson's in the league. It's the last 4 or 5 specialists out of Florida have all gone to the NFL.
Yeah.
And it's because they know how to recruit it right. And I think once schools catch on to that and they're able to start bringing in guys that can do that consistently, you'll see the competitiveness of kicking in college go up tremendously, and you'll see guys go to the league a lot more often.
That coming from Cole Murphy here, a lot of great insight in the world of kicking and on special teams inside the Cafe Kubal studios. This is Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora special, honoring Andre Szmyt with Cole Murphy, passing the torch from Mr. 59 career to now 60 and counting. Cole, in your time at Syracuse, 59 made field goals. You passed Nate Trout, who's another good friend of mine. Just what that meant to you when you did it, because everybody's going to feel what they feel, but Andre is feeling it now after passing you. You felt it after passing Nate and the rest of the crew in the kicking history of Syracuse. What went through your head? What went through your heart when they said, Cole Murphy, you're the guy now? And I'm pretty confident I was there for that as well. So.
Yeah. I mean, it's you feel a huge amount of pride. I mean, it kind of validates the amount of work and the amount of time and effort you've put in. And I remember the day after and the day of, I mean, I sat at home and I was like, man, I can't believe I've actually gotten as far as I have. I mean, I remember being in high school and thinking, man, I've gotten no college opportunities and it's February of my senior year. Yeah. And to go all the way from there to, having the number 1 record in school history it's a huge deal. And I was honored to have it. But I mean, at the same time, I understand that it's a situational thing. Sometimes it's going to happen. Sometimes it's not going to happen. I mean, you have great quarterbacks that didn't break a lot of records, like Ryan Nassib. I mean, he was fantastic, but you had to wait until Eric Dungy was out there to break Donovan McNabb's records. So sometimes it's just a situational thing, and I completely understand. But at the same time, I mean, Andre's record-breaking career, you can tell it's different. He's breaking it as a junior, 4 games or 5 games into his junior year. He's still got another 20 games or so to go. So, I mean, if let's say he averages 1 field goal a game, which he's been averaging more, right? If he averages 1 a game, he's shattering the record by over 20 field goals. That's huge. So I think for him, it should be, he definitely should feel some pride there. I mean, it's not like he's just barely getting the record. He's absolutely smashing it, and he's probably going to hold it for a really, really long time.
And Cole, to go back to your time, you did it back in 2017, and you did it against Wake Forest on Saturday, November 11th, when you made your 58th career field goal. You ended with 59 overall, and that's what Szmyt had to tie and pass. But when you hit 58, you passed John Bishop, who was leading Syracuse history with 57, Dave Jacobs, who had 53, Nate Trout and Ross Krautman, both have been on this show. Both have 49 field goals made in their career, and Dan McAulay with 43. When you look at that list of Bishop and Jacobs, Trout, Krautman, and McAulay, what does that list mean to you? Because now, I mean, you're a part of this list forever. You're number 2 all time. And you look across this list, I mean, how much research or background did you do in some of these former kickers? I know you talked about Ross Krautman and Nate Trout, but just what your thoughts are about being a part of this list and when you pass these guys on the way to the top.
I mean, it's a huge elite list. I mean, when you look back at the history of kickers in Syracuse, it's amazing. And the only one that really sticks out to me other than that group is Gary Anderson.
Yeah.
Who, I mean, he played in the league for forever. And I really think
as well.
Oh yeah, and Lindo Marais, exactly. Yeah, I think both of them were only there for a couple of years, and I think that's probably why they're not near the top of the list. But I mean, just to be in the same conversation as those guys, to me, is a huge honor. I mean, it's amazing when you go back and you look at how much they accomplished, and just to be in the same realm as them or the same area as them is a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, I mean, for you, I mean, what does that do? I know you're a humble guy. You've always been nice and kind, but I mean, it's got to feel good. I mean, to be sitting here right now talking with me about the fact that, your record was the top, your record was the one that had to be broken, and now you're still up there and you're in the Nate Trout, Ross Krautman, Gary Anderson, Alindo Mari, just to be in the history of people that wore the jersey with you. Syracuse's special teams, punters, kickers, there's so many guys on special teams that will always live in my history, in my brain. And the kickers, there's numerous, and we just named a bunch here. So, I mean, it's got to feel good to you right now to sit in the car and, be driving down the road in California and just be thinking to myself, dang, I'm in the top two. He had to beat me to get there. I mean, it's got to be pretty cool for you.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And I can't tell you how proud I am, and I can't tell you how proud my family is. I mean, growing up, I didn't think I was going to be playing football. I really didn't. I thought I was going to be playing soccer. And actually in high school, I had the opportunity to go play for the Galaxy Academy, and I turned it down to go play football. Yeah. And for me, it was a big risk. I mean, even going to Syracuse was a huge risk. I was going in as a walk-on as well. And, for me personally, my parents said, okay, we've got enough money for about a year. You can pay for a year. And then if you're not on scholarship, you're going to have to come home. And once I was put on scholarship and everything started to settle down, it all kind of sunk in. I was like, wow, I'm actually here, and I'm here to stay, and I'm going to be the guy. And man, I'll tell you what, I really do miss it. Honestly, I miss being up there. And when I can, I want to try to go back as often as I can. But, 3,000-mile plane ride's kind of hard.
Well, what I think is cool is, and maybe this is the way to go, maybe Syracuse should just get into the habit, and not great for you guys. I mean, obviously this has changed, but maybe it behooves Syracuse to just have walk-on kickers, because the last two walk-on kickers that they've had here are the top two ever in field goals made. So it worked for you, and in 2014, and it worked for Andre Szmyt just a couple of years ago coming into Syracuse. But it's really incredible and amazing that not only did you get to the top, and not only are you still there in the top two, but that you got it from the walk-on status. And when you did that you had to have that moment amongst all of this where, yeah, there's the beauty of you doing your job and becoming the all-time, Syracuse kicker and field goals made, and now being number two, but to also have that moment where the coaching staff said, hey, Cole, guess what? You got a scholarship.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will say too, I think being a walk-on sometimes gives you a little chip on your shoulder. And I think that's what's needed sometimes. And I'm going to kind of relate it back to the coaching part. For me, I've kind of noticed in the last few years, a lot of schools, like you said, are going back towards giving kickers walk-ons, because for a while they were throwing out scholarships every single year, and it was great. But the problem with it is that kids get complacent, and all of a sudden a kid goes, okay, well, I've got 3 offers. I can go, the school of my choice. And they don't train quite as hard. They don't think about all the stuff they need to do on a regular basis so that when they get there, they're ready to go. And so a lot of schools now, it was probably about 3-4 years ago, they started offering 1 scholarship kid and 1 walk-on kid. And they found out, for the most part, the walk-on kid was actually winning out. And yeah. I think it's because they all had that chip on their shoulder. And so it's funny. It started out as all the walk-ons, and they'd get scholarship as they start. Then they kind of went over to the scholarship aspect, and they started giving all the scholarships out. And they noticed that it wasn't producing kickers quite as good as they had before. And then they kind of did this hybrid where they're doing both now. And I think it's probably the best way to go. But at the same time, it's kind of a weird thing, because do you want to be the scholarship guy, or do you want to be the walk-on guy? Because on one hand, you're getting your schooling paid for, but on the other hand, you've got to make sure you stay on top of your stuff so that you're the guy and you don't lose that spot.
When your parents said, we got a year or so that we can afford tuition, but after that, what are we going to do? Did that push you? Was that in the back of your head when you were competing in practice and competing in camp and whatnot, to say, hey, I need to get this scholarship if I want to stay here?
It was. It was in the back of my mind a lot. I thought about it a good amount, and it was something that I had to talk about with our kicking coach. Do you remember Beat Gold? He was there when I was a freshman through sophomore year, and that was one of the things that I talked about when I was getting recruited there. I said, hey, I've only got enough money for a year here, and he said, okay, well, that's a risk you're going to have to take, and understand we're not pressuring you. We understand that if you can't, you can't, but we're not going to move on until you give us an answer. And it was a risk I had to take, but once I realized that I needed to take it, it was definitely worth it. I went in there, I dominated, and I did what I needed to do. And then January rolled around, and by that time I talked with coach and I said, hey, just reminding you guys again, I know we talked about this in the summer. I'm not saying I want a scholarship because I want it. I'm saying it because I need it. And I mean, within 5 minutes, the head coach came to me and he said, yeah, we're gonna put you on scholarship. And it was such a relief because my parents have been talking to me about it for months and months. And I finally got to give them the call that said, hey, I'm here to stay. And I mean, my parents couldn't be more proud.
And for you, you just said it. You said, hey, coach, I don't want it because I want it. I need it. When you did your part and you did what you could control, and then you went to the staff and said, I need this. I want to be here. And they reacted, like you said, within 5 minutes and said, okay, and here's your scholarship. Bring me into what that meant to you and who told you you were getting the scholarship. And then secondly, bring me into your parents' reaction when you called them.
It was Coach Schaefer originally. I had talked with Gold and I went in and I said, hey, I know we had talked about it before, and my parents are making sure that I talk to you about it because it's something that needs to be discussed. Because if it was January when we talked, and I told him, like, hey, if I need to go home, I better start planning when I'm leaving. I need to start planning what JUCO I'm going to go to, all that kind of stuff. And he said, okay, well, we'll talk with Coach Schaefer and we'll kind of figure it all out. And we finished our meeting and I got up and I walked out of the office and I ran into Coach Schaefer walking out of our football facility. And that's when he said, hey, come into my office. And we walked in there and he told me, hey, we're putting you on scholarship and you're going to be the guy once the summer's done. So you don't have to worry about paying for schooling anymore. And when I called my parents, I mean, I remember my mom crying. I mean, they were so excited. And I mean, they were already as proud as they could be. I mean, I had already done really well. I'd won the starting job, and it was something that I feel like if it didn't happen, it would be a little bit of a surprise because of how well I did my freshman year. But just to kind of hear it and get it confirmed really was just huge. It was really, really huge. And I mean, especially considering I actually am the first person to go to college in my entire family. So it was really, really a cool thing. And my parents just, they couldn't be more proud.
Yeah, I mean, and that's incredible. So, I mean, first and foremost, congratulations on that. And
Thank
'cause
you.
I didn't know that. So, to be the first of your family to go to college, I mean, bring me into that. Bring me into to having that legacy, not just football, but to go to college, period. Just, I mean, you're carrying a torch as a walk-on, you're carrying a torch as somebody who's on a football team, but you're carrying the torch of your, probably most importantly, easily most importantly, you're carrying the name of your family.
Yeah, absolutely. And my parents, for the work that they did, or for the work that they do, they really didn't need a college degree. So for them, it wasn't that big of a deal. And my aunt was a professional motocross racer, so for her, it was, she never even thought about college. She was 15 years old and she was already racing professionally. So for her, it wasn't that big a deal. But yeah, I mean, they knew when I was a kid that they needed to instill that was something I needed to do. I was going to go to college, I was going to get a degree, and I needed to do that in order to have a good job. Because, back in the 70s when my parents were kids or roughly my age, you didn't have to go to college. You could find other ways to work, whether it was going to a trade school or doing what my dad did, where he's a production manager for bands, or different areas where it's not necessarily needed. But in today's world, I feel like it definitely is needed.
Yeah, and so you have that, and now that's under your belt. You get to be the first person in your family to go and to get a college degree. So, Cole, with all the history that you've had, all the hoopla around what you've done as a kicker, everyone that comes after you, your potential kids, family members, cousins, this, that, and whatever. I mean, for you, how exciting and rewarding is it that the Murphy family is led by Cole when it comes to college?
I mean, I think it's huge. I mean, it shows it sets a standard.
Yeah.
I really think. And I mean, I'll be honest, I'm pretty sure my kids are going to go to college. I mean, it's about a 99% chance, unless barring something crazy happens and they win the lottery or something, they're going to go to college. But I think that's the most important thing, is just that it sets the standard. And you know, I come from a line of pretty smart people. I mean, not to brag, but I mean, my parents are pretty intelligent. I think I'm a pretty smart guy. And I think the degree shows that. I think it shows that you're capable of doing what you need to do and taking care of your stuff so that you can actually go and get a good job in the world.
Yeah, and for you, what are you doing? I know you talked about coaching and training kickers now currently. How are you using your degree and how are you paying it forward on and off the field?
So currently I'm a kicking coach. I'm a free agent still, so I'm trying to make it onto a team, and I'm hoping something happens, but I'm planning as if that won't happen, because ultimately that's what's going to happen. Eventually I won't be able to compete anymore. So as of right now, I'm working with kids. I'm training about 45 different kickers down in LA. And I think this last year, I've been doing it for about 3 years now. And this last year was the first year that I really had a full class of seniors leave. And I'll tell you what, it was really fantastic. I mean, I have two kids going to Notre Dame, and these kids are all playing football. And two are going to Notre Dame. One's going to USC, one's going to Arizona, one's going to Washington, and one's going to Oklahoma State. And a couple of them are already playing. A couple of them are the backups. And I'll tell you what, I'm really proud of these kids. They've been working their tails off, and I think it's going to grow. I think it's going to grow a little bit more. I need to probably get a facility, which is my next plan. But yeah, I mean, that's for right now. That's kind of my goal. I want to expand this to the point where I can make it a hub for kids to come to LA, train, and get ready for college. And ultimately, I would love it if eventually I could be the guy where I can funnel kids to colleges, because they trust my training, they trust my evaluations, and they trust the kids that I'm going to bring out. So
You know what it's like to be a kicker and have people not focus on it, and to, have it be an underdeveloped area. So you're trying to develop that area, pay it forward, and make the bridge to collegiate athletics and hopefully to the NFL easier for other people that come after you, essentially.
yeah, absolutely. I when I left college, I kind of saw the hole that needed to be filled. And there are guys that are still working on it. I mean, there are guys like Chris Saylor, there are guys like Jimmy Cole, who they are ranking, they're evaluating kids, but I think it's gotten to the point where they've gotten a little too big, and I think their evaluations they're good, but they're relying a little bit too much on one time when they see a kid every once a year or twice a year. And I think there need to be some guys that train kids on a regular basis and then send them to those guys, or send them to the summer camps that the colleges host. And I think that's kind of the hole that I'm trying to fill currently.
And you're still looking at opportunities in the NFL. I know you and I talked when you had an opportunity with the Cardinals. It's such a difficult thing, because if you're a good kicker, there's 32 jobs. And what I've seen I mean, Zerline definitely showed me when he left a touchdown out there. He left 2 field goals and an extra point. And with the extra point moving back a few years ago, obviously the percentages are not 90+% anymore. So what can you tell me about the world of the NFL and trying to make it? And do you get those calls? Do you have to constantly push for it? Are there people that are, because I feel like it's a lot easier for a kicker to lose their job now than it used to be. And we see the shifting a lot. So how are you dealing with it? And what's the life like of being on the outside, but still saying, hey, listen, I'm training, I'm available, I could come in? Because some of these teams play 3 or 4 kickers before it's all said and done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a weird world, honestly. My first agent, he basically told me, and these are great words to live by, and at least as a kicker in the NFL, you don't only have to be good, you have to be lucky. Sometimes you just get a great opportunity where someone calls you and they say, hey, we need a guy right now.
Yeah.
And you got to be ready to go at a moment's notice. I mean, they give you a phone call, you're in the airport in 2 hours. So it's a rough life. I mean, I've got a bag packed in my car basically 24/7. But it's one of those things where, you have to understand that sometimes it's going to happen and sometimes it's not. And you have to prepare as if it is, but you have to plan as if it isn't. And yeah, I mean, it's a really it's a rough life when you're 20 years old or 22 years old and you're trying to get a career going, but at the same time you have to spend half of your day training, waking up at 4 a.m. to go work out, kicking and punting, and then creating films to send out to teams and talking with your agent and figuring out what's happening with these new leagues like the XFL and the USFL and all that kind of stuff. Because luckily that's more opportunities for me to play. So yeah, I mean it's a weird world, but it's one that I couldn't imagine myself not doing at the moment. There's some days where you wake up and you haven't kicked well for a couple days, and you kind of think, man, why am I doing this? And then you feel sorry for yourself for about a couple hours, and I realize, what else would I be doing? What else would I be doing with my life? I need to keep training. I need to be prepared for whatever happens. And honestly, I'm just going to keep doing it until I can't anymore. So it's a good way to live. I think it's hard, but it's rewarding. I think the benefit is way worth the risk.
What do you have to do mentally as we realize that, any game is a mental game, but life is a mental game? So mental toughness has been tested in the last 18 months for everybody all around the world. Mental toughness has been tested individually in people's lives throughout their lives at different points, maybe all the time, maybe some of the time, maybe a little bit of the time, but it's been tested. So what can you say about maybe some key ingredients to mental toughness? How do you stay strong mentally, not just in your craft, but when you're in front of fans and people are booing you, or when you've missed 2 kicks in a game? How do you stay mentally tough at the baseline? And then how do you stay mentally tough when you're missing, or people are, kind of on you at a game, be it your own fans or somebody else's fans? There's levels of mental toughness. You have to have that baseline, but then you also have to have that kind of call to action as well.
Yeah, I think it depends on the person. There are some people like me and I think like Andre, and actually I think Andre's better at it, but you have to have a certain level where you kind of just don't care. I mean, you can't care about the opinions of 20,000 people that don't like you. And at the end of the day, if you're really good, the team that you're playing isn't going to like you. If you're really bad, the team that you're playing for isn't going to like you. So at the end of the day, you have to have a certain level of mental toughness where you don't care, right? You don't care what other people think about you. You care about what you think about yourself.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the most important things. And I think especially in this world that we're in right now, I mean, perseverance. You got to always be able to push through and understand that things are going to always go on. It doesn't matter, right? And there's a great story that someone told me a few months back, and actually it was pretty interesting. It's a little story about like a farmer who one of his horses runs away, and everyone says, "Oh, that's terrible." And he says, "Well, maybe." Next day, the horse comes back with a whole herd, so he's got maybe 8, 9, 10 horses now, right? And everyone says, "Oh, that's great." And he says, "Oh, well, maybe." Next day, his son goes out and rides on one of the horses and breaks his arm. And so it just keeps going back and forth, where it's like, okay, well, it could be bad, it could be good.
Yeah.
So it really just doesn't, you won't know until you see the effect of it later down the road. And you never know. I mean, when you get cut by a team, sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes it means you weren't supposed to be there, right? And, whether it's, us being locked down for months, or us being let go from our job, or being told we're not good enough, whatever it is, you've got to be able to persevere and push through. And 2, you have to know at a certain point, you can't care what other people think. You just have to understand it's about what you think about yourself.
Yeah. It comes down to you. They say other people's opinions of me are none of my business. So, and you kind of alluded to that. So
Yeah,
here
absolutely.
here on Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora, I want to give a proud thanks and a special to Cafe Cubal, our studio partner, as well as Carvel DeWitt, Mon Paz Kettle Corn and Popcorn Factory, the Wildcat Sports Pub, Honda City of Liverpool, Chick-fil-A Cicero and Chick-fil-A Clay, Avicoli's, Canine Camp Dog Daycare, the Millhouse Market, Canine Campground Dog Boarding, PB&J's Lunchbox, Progressive Dental, Mother's Cupboard, Lemoyne College and the Lemoyne College Dolphins, Pizza Man and Victory Sports Medicine, and Orthopedics. Final word, Cole, goes to you on not just a walk-on kicker, but a walk-on in general, and to the walk-ons in life. When people don't believe that you're good enough, or they don't give you the credit maybe right off the bat or maybe at all, when we are a walk-on as a broadcaster, a nurse, a doctor, a lawyer, a flight attendant, or a kicker, what's your advice to people that have to walk on and have to prove something that they already know inside, and maybe it doesn't happen right away?
The biggest thing is trust yourself and believe in yourself. If you don't think you can do it, you're 100% right. If you believe you can do it, you're 100% right. As long as it's humanly possible. Like if I try to say, if I'm going to fly, I'm not going to grow wings, right? But if I say I'm going to be able to hit a 55-yard field goal, I know I can humanly do it. So trust yourself and believe in your capabilities.
That coming from Cole Murphy. Make sure you keep in touch with Wake Up Call with Dan Tortora every Monday through Friday from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. Eastern Time. Facebook.com/WakeUpCallDT, Facebook.com/LiveNowDT, and YouTube.com/WakeUpCallDT, as well as listening on WakeUpCallDT.com's homepage and MixLR.com/WakeUpCallDT. Facebook at Wake Up Call DT, Twitter at Call DT, and Instagram at Wake Up Call _DT. I was going to tell Cole to do all of that, but I didn't want him to have to remember it all. So Cole, I appreciate your time. I'm so incredibly proud of you. I'm very, very thankful for our friendship. Since you left Syracuse, it's meant the absolute world to me that you pick up the phone when I call. So beyond everything else, whether you made one field goal or 59, I do want to say very, very honestly and truly, thank you for giving me your time, which is a gift you can never get back. And thank you for just being a kind-hearted person that's paying it forward and helping people out. And, selfishly, I hope I get to see you sometime soon.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And same here. I hope I get to see you soon. And quite honestly, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that they can do it. They just have to believe in themselves and go Orange.